Warning. What you just clicked on is not what you think it is. Most people who land on a video like this expect motivation. They expect someone to tell them they are special, they are chosen, they are already on the right path. They expect to feel good within the first 30 seconds and carry that feeling into the rest of their day without anything actually changing inside them. That is not what this is. What you clicked on is a test, and it began the moment the title appeared on your screen. Because something in you did not scroll past it. Something in you stopped. And that stop was not random. It was a response. A signal from a part of your system that recognizes, even before your conscious mind can explain it, that something here is different. The question is whether you are willing to find out what that difference actually costs you. Because here is what nobody tells you when they talk about frequency, about awakening, about spiritual intelligence. They talk about it like it is a reward. Like it is something that gets handed to you when you are finally ready. Like the universe delivers it gently, warmly, wrapped in something that feels like peace. It does not work that way. Frequency is not a gift. It is a pressure test. And most people fail it not because they are weak, not because they are unintelligent, not because they have not done enough inner work, or read enough books, or listened to enough talks. They fail it because their internal system, the actual wiring beneath their identity, beneath their self-image, beneath everything they have constructed to appear stable, is not calibrated for what arrives. And that calibration gap is what the next few minutes are going to expose in you. 7 seconds. That is the interval. That is the window. And before you dismiss that as too short to matter, understand something that most people never stop long enough to realize. Your body makes its most honest decisions in fractions of a second, before your mind constructs a story, before your ego selects a response, before your personality chooses how to present itself. In the gap between stimulus and interpretation, your real state of regulation is visible. Raw, unedited, unperformed. 7 seconds is not short. 7 seconds is enough. A man can step into a room and know within 3 seconds whether the environment is safe or threatening. Not because he thought about it. Because his nervous system processed it before language arrived. A woman can hear one sentence from someone she loves and know within 2 seconds whether the truth is present in it. Not because she analyzed tone and word choice, because something deeper in her registered the frequency beneath the words. We are far more sensitive than we allow ourselves to believe. And we are far less in control than we pretend to be. That is where this begins. The Arcturians, as they have been described across ancient traditions, across modern channeled material, across the accounts of thousands of people who have had experiences they could not explain through conventional frameworks, are not presented here as beings to worship, to fear, or to petition for assistance. Think of them instead as a conceptual representation of something real. Advanced pattern intelligence. Systems of information that operate at a level where communication does not require language, where transmission does not require agreement, where the signal arrives not through your ears or your eyes, but through the structure of your nervous system itself. Whether you receive that literally or metaphorically does not change what happens next. Because the effect of a frequency does not depend on your belief in its source. It depends on your capacity to receive it without fragmenting. And that capacity is exactly what is being measured here. Now, before we go any further, if this video is landing somewhere real for you, if something in the first 2 minutes has made you sit slightly straighter, breathe slightly differently, pay attention in a way that feels different from how you usually consume content, then do something right now. Subscribe to this channel, and leave one word in the comments. The word is stable. Not because it is a password, not because it unlocks anything external, but because the act of choosing that word, pausing, and placing it in the comments is itself a small test of whether you are engaging actively or passively consuming. And the difference between those two modes will determine everything about what you get from this experience. Subscribe. Comment stable, and then stay, because what comes next is where most people discover something about themselves they were not expecting. Frequency tolerance. That is the concept at the center of everything you are about to experience. And before you can understand what it means to pass or fail the 7-second test, you need to understand what frequency tolerance actually is, beneath the spiritual language, beneath the metaphysical framing, at the level of your actual biology. Your nervous system is not neutral. It is not a passive receiver that simply processes whatever arrives. It is an active prediction machine. At every moment, it is scanning your environment, comparing incoming data to stored patterns, and generating a response based on what it expects to happen next. This is not a flaw. This is an extraordinary survival mechanism. But it becomes a limitation when the incoming signal does not match any stored pattern. When something arrives that the system cannot immediately categorize. In that moment, your nervous system has two primary responses available. It can open, allowing the unfamiliar input to register fully, to move through the system, to be processed even without immediate understanding. Or it can close, contracting around familiar patterns, filtering the input. Through existing expectations, reducing its intensity by reducing your exposure to it. Most people close. Automatically, reflexively, without awareness that the closing is even happening. And that closing is the failure. Not because the signal overwhelmed them, but because they never actually let it arrive. Think about the last time someone said something to you that was genuinely true but difficult to hear. Your first response before you chose anything, before you decided how to react, was a contraction, a slight tightening somewhere in your body, a narrowing of your awareness, a pull toward a defensive thought. That pull was your system closing, filtering the input before it could reach the deeper layers where actual change becomes possible. Now imagine that same mechanism not triggered by words but by pure frequency, by a concentrated signal with no language attached to it, no story to argue with, no personality to dismiss. Just the signal itself arriving at your system and asking, without asking, whether you can hold it. That is what the 7 seconds are. And here is what tends to happen inside the 99.9%. The signal begins. Something subtle shifts in the environment. The system detects it. And before any conscious awareness of the shift occurs, the protection response activates. It looks different in different people. Some feel a sudden restlessness, a need to move, to check something, to adjust their position. Some feel a spike of mild anxiety with no identifiable source. Some feel a strong pull toward skepticism, toward the dismissive thought, this is nonsense. Because dismissal is one of the fastest ways to close a processing window. Some feel nothing and interpret that absence as stability, when in reality it is the deepest form of closure. The system shutting down input entirely rather than risking exposure to something it cannot predict. And in all of these cases, withdrawal follows. The person does not complete the exposure. They exit, either physically by clicking away, or internally by leaving the experience while their body remains in the room. No update occurs. No adaptation takes place. The system returns to exactly the state it was in before the signal arrived, and the pattern continues. Now here is what happens inside the 0.1%. The signal begins. The system detects the shift. The protection response may activate because it activates in every nervous system. But something different happens next. Instead of following the contraction into withdrawal, the system stays open. The processing window does not close. The unfamiliar input is allowed to register. Not because it is comfortable, not because it is familiar, but because the system has been trained through experience, through practice, through repeated exposure to discomfort held without escape, to remain present even when presence is difficult. And in that remaining, the input arrives fully. The system receives it, and an update becomes possible. That is the entire difference. Not sensitivity, not special gifts, not chosen status. Processing window duration. How long the system stays open before protection overrides presence. And that duration can be trained. Here is what that training looks like in practice. Not in meditation retreats. Not in elaborate spiritual protocols. In ordinary moments that most people treat as inconveniences. The moment you feel the urge to check your phone during a quiet moment and you choose not to. That is a training repetition. The moment someone criticizes you and instead of immediately defending yourself, you pause, breathe, and let the feedback actually land before you respond. That is a training repetition. The moment you sit with discomfort, physical or emotional, and instead of immediately moving to relieve it, you observe it for 30 seconds with curiosity, instead of resistance. That is a training repetition. None of these feel significant in the moment. They are invisible. They produce no immediate reward. No one applauds. Nothing dramatic changes. But the nervous system records them. And over time, those recordings restructure how the system responds to intensity. The processing window extends slightly, then slightly more, then more again, until what once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. What once triggered immediate closure can now be held long enough to be processed. That is frequency tolerance increasing, not through belief, through repetition. Now here is the part that most people do not want to hear because it removes a comfortable story they have been telling themselves. You cannot fake this. You can speak the language of spiritual development fluently. You can use all the right words. You can describe your inner journey with precision and eloquence. You can accumulate followers and admiration in the appearance of someone who has done the work. And your nervous system will still close at the first genuine signal it cannot predict. Because the nervous system does not respond to language. It responds to structure, to the actual architecture of regulation that exists beneath your personality and your words and your self-image. And that architecture is built through experience, through the accumulation of moments where you chose presence over escape, truth over comfort, observation over performance. There are no shortcuts, and that is not discouraging. That is clarifying. Because it means that wherever you are right now is a real starting point, not a judgment, a location. And from any location, movement is possible. But movement requires first knowing where you are standing. So here is the honest question you need to sit with before the 7-second transmission occurs. If your internal state were measured right now, not your intentions, not your self-concept, not your spiritual vocabulary, but your actual baseline level of nervous system regulation, what would it show? Would it show steadiness? The kind that does not require external validation to maintain itself? Would it show hidden exhaustion wearing the face of discipline? Would it show suppressed emotion that has been managed so long it no longer feels like emotion? Just a constant low-level tension that you have accepted as normal? Would it show scattered attention that has become so habitual it feels like personality? Would it show sensitivity that was labeled weakness so many times it learned to hide itself beneath performance? These are not rhetorical questions. They are the most practically useful questions you can ask yourself right now. Because your honest answer to any one of them tells you exactly what the 7 seconds will find when they arrive. And they are about to arrive. Before they do, one more thing. Like this video right now. Not as a favor. Not for the algorithm, though it does help this reach the people who need it. Like it because it is a physical action that represents a choice. The choice to engage rather than observe from a distance. To participate rather than consume. That choice made consciously is itself a small act of regulation. It tells your system that you are here intentionally, not accidentally. An intention changes the quality of your attention. And the quality of your attention determines the quality of what you receive. Like the video. And stay. Now the protocol. Find a position that does not strain your body. You do not need to sit in any particular way. You do not need to adopt any posture associated with meditation or prayer or spiritual practice. Sit or stand in whatever way allows your body to remain still without effort. This is important. Do not prepare dramatically. Do not try to slow your breathing or calm your thoughts or relax your muscles. Because any artificial adjustment will distort your baseline. And this is a baseline test. If you perform calm, you will measure your performance, not your actual state. And performance data is useless for calibration. You want to know where you actually are, not where you can pretend to be. So arrive as you are. Whatever tension is present, let it remain. Whatever distraction exists in your mind, do not push it away. Whatever physical sensations your body is currently producing, simply notice them without trying to change them. And then, when the signal comes, your only instruction is this. Do not escape. Do not analyze. Do not anticipate what you are supposed to feel. Do not monitor yourself for signs of the right experience. Just remain, present, open, without agenda. That is everything. And that is harder than anything elaborate you have ever been asked to do. Because the mind wants a task. It wants complexity. It wants something to do, something to figure out, something to achieve. And you are going to give it nothing except the instruction to stay. Which means the only thing that will fill those 7 seconds is whatever is already inside you. That is what makes it a test. Now after the transmission ends, the most important part begins. Not the experience itself. What you do with it. Most people rush to interpret their experience before they have fully registered it. The mind moves faster than awareness in most people. So by the time conscious attention turns to the experience, the narrative machine has already processed it, labeled it, filed it, and produced a story that protects the existing self-image. You need to move slower than that. After the 7 seconds, sit with whatever remains for at least another 30 seconds before you think about it. Let the experience complete itself before you evaluate it. Because evaluation interrupts completion, and an incomplete experience cannot produce accurate data. Then, when you do turn your attention to what occurred, ask these specific questions. Not general ones. Not how do I feel? Specific, precise, measurable questions. What was the dominant sensation or quality in my body during the signal? Not what did I think about it? What did I actually feel? At what point did my attention move away from the experience? Was it immediately? After a few seconds? Did it stay present throughout? Did my body soften or tighten as the signal continued? Did my mind become quieter or louder? After the signal ended, how long did it take for my system to return to its baseline state? And finally, and answer this one carefully, is my honest response to what I experienced something I would be comfortable sharing? Or does it reveal something about my actual state that I would prefer to reframe before anyone else, including myself, sees it? That last question is where most people quietly lie to themselves. Not dramatically, just slightly. Just enough to protect the image. And that slight distortion is enough to prevent the experience from producing real data. Real data requires real honesty. And real honesty is the rarest resource in this entire process. Now here is what the data means depending on what you found. If you experienced a sense of recognition, a feeling of alignment, or even a neutral stillness that did not require effort to maintain, your system is operating with a relatively higher baseline of regulation. Not perfect, not at its ceiling, but stable enough that the signal could arrive and register without triggering immediate closure. That is useful to know, not as a badge, as a starting point for deeper work. If you experience discomfort, restlessness, a pull toward escape, a sudden spike of skepticism, or a strong desire to do anything, other than remain present, your system has shown you exactly where its current edge is. And that edge is not a problem. It is a location, the most valuable location you can know. Because you can work from an edge. You cannot work from a misperception of where you are. If you experience nothing, examine that carefully. Because nothing can mean two very different things. It can mean that your system is regulated enough that the input created no excess noise. Or it can mean that your system closed so completely and so automatically that the input never actually arrived at a level where sensation could register. Only you can determine which one occurred. And the determining factor is this. After the signal ended, did you feel more present and clear? Or did you feel the same flat, slightly disconnected quality that you often mistake for calm in your daily life? One of those is stability. The other is numbness. And they look identical from the outside. But they feel completely different from inside a system that is honest enough to tell the difference. This is where the work of calibration actually begins. Because now you have data. Real data. Not about what you believe. Not about what you aspire to. About how your system actually responded to a real input in a real moment. And data, when used correctly, becomes a pathway. The pathway looks like this. You return to the exposure. Not once. Repeatedly. Not to seek a different experience. To track whether the experience changes. Because if your processing window is extending, even slightly, you will be able to notice it in specific, measurable ways. Your attention will hold for a fraction longer before moving. Your body will take less time to return to baseline after the signal ends. Your mind will produce fewer interference thoughts during the experience. Your system will require less effort to remain open. These changes are subtle. They will not feel dramatic. They will not produce the kind of shift you can describe impressively to someone else. But they are real, and they accumulate. And one day you will expose yourself to something that once triggered immediate closure, and your system will simply hold it. Without effort, without performance, without even noticing that it once could not. That is what growth in this domain actually looks and feels like. Not revelation. Recalibration. And recalibration happens in the repetition, in the quiet, in the honest observation of a system that is learning, incrementally, to hold more than it could before. You are part of something larger than a single viewing experience. Right now, across different time zones, different countries, different cultural contexts, different baseline states, different levels of regulation and fragmentation, people are engaging with the same signal, each from their own location, each bringing their own history to the same 7 seconds. And the diversity of those responses taken together reveals something important. This mechanism is universal. The structure of nervous system response does not change based on culture or belief or language. The processing window either stays open or it closes. The signal either registers or it gets filtered. The system either updates or it protects. And that universality means that wherever you are, whatever your background, whatever your history, the same pathway is available to you. Not because of anything mystical, because of how human systems actually function. So as we close this transmission, I want you to do one final thing. Not for engagement, for presence. Because your location is not irrelevant. It is part of the larger pattern being mapped here. The geographical distribution of responses tells us something about how environments shape baseline regulation, about how different conditions produce different starting points, about how universal this mechanism is across different contexts. Leave in the comments where you are watching from. Your country, your region, your city if you are comfortable, not as a formality, as a marker, a signal that you were here, that you stayed, that you chose presence over escape, even if that choice was imperfect, even if your system closed slightly, even if the experience was uncomfortable. Discomfort that is witnessed honestly is more valuable than comfort that is performed for an audience of one. And share this video with one person. Not someone you think is already spiritually developed. Someone who you sense is ready to see something true about themselves, but has not yet found the right trigger. Because sometimes the most useful thing one person can do for another is place something in front of them that their system cannot ignore. The next transmission goes deeper. Not into more complex concepts, into more precise territory. Because the next question is not whether you can hold the frequency. It is whether you can hold it while something inside you is actively trying to convince you that you already are. That is where the real exposure happens. And most people are not ready for it. But some of you, the ones who are still here, the ones whose system stayed open long enough to receive this completely, may already sense what that means. Stay close, because what comes next will not feel like content. It will feel like contact. And that is exactly what it is.